Elias Vorn had once believed the stars were honest. They shone, they guided, they kept their promises. Now they only watched. His ship moved slowly through the edge of known space where the light from distant suns grew thin and quiet. The engines whispered instead of roared, as if even the machine knew it did not belong here. Around him, space felt old. Not ancient in years, but in memory, like a place forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. Elias sat alone in the pilot's chair, his hands resting loosely on the controls. He was still wearing his envoy jacket, even though its symbol had been stripped of meaning. The silver crest on his chest had once marked him as a voice of humanity. Now it marked him as something else, traitor. That was the word the conquered had used. He did not shout back, he did not argue, he only left. The exile zone was not a prison, but it might as well have been. No trade lanes passed through it. No travelers wandered here by accident. Only broken satellites, drifting debris, and forgotten signals filled the dark. The galaxy had moved on without this place. It had moved on without him. Elias leaned forward and tapped a few commands into the ship's system. A soft blue light filled the cockpit as the scanners came alive. Most of the readings were empty. Radiation, dust, the quiet echo of old star paths. Then something new appeared. A signal. At first he thought it was just noise. The edge of space was full of strange whispers, echoes from long-dead civilizations and machines that still spoke to no one. But this signal was different. It was steady, clean, intentional. His heart slowed. The ship system tried to label it, then failed. The data did not match any known species code. Elias adjusted the frequency, narrowing the range. The signal sharpened like a voice coming into focus. And then, against all reason, the system translated it, not into alien tones, into human language. He sat back in his chair, his breath catching in his chest. Human signals did not exist out here. Humanity's oldest probes had never gone this far. Even the earliest colony ships had turned back long before reaching the dead star drifting in the distance ahead of him. The source of the signal lay near that star, a dark, collapsed sun wrapped in a thin halo of frozen light. Elias whispered to himself without realizing it. "That's not possible." But the message kept repeating. It was not long, it was not loud, it was simple. Record found. Memory preserved, promise unbroken. His hands moved on their own, guiding the ship forward. The closer he got, the stronger the signal became. The dead star filled the viewport, a massive black shape against a field of dim stars. Around it floated something small and bright. A structure, it looked like a beacon, but unlike any he had seen before. Its shape was smooth and curved, as if it had grown instead of being built. Soft lines of pale light ran across its surface, pulsing slowly like a sleeping heart. The ship docked automatically. Elias stepped into the airlock, his boots echoing in the quiet. He felt small here, not just in size, but in time. This place felt older than everything he knew. The door opened. Inside, the beacon was warm, not in temperature, but in feeling. The walls glowed with a gentle light that followed him as he walked. There were no controls, no screens, only a single platform in the center of the chamber. He stepped onto it. The room changed. Light rose around him, forming shapes in the air. Stars appeared, then ships. Human ships, not the ones he knew. These were older, slower, built with simple designs and hopeful markings. Their hulls were painted with words instead of numbers. First light. A voice spoke, not from the walls, but from everywhere. "Welcome, traveler." It was human, clear, calm. Elias swallowed. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am a record," the voice said. "I am a memory. I am what remains when no one is left to remember." The stars around him shifted. The human ships moved forward, passing through a field of glowing energy. On the other side waited something massive. A fleet of alien vessels, older than any design Elias recognized. Their shapes were tall and curved, like living towers drifting in space. "This was the first meeting," the voice said. "The galaxy before the conquered, the age before unity." Elias watched as the human ships slowed. They did not raise weapons. They did not change course. They sent signals. The alien fleet responded. The scene changed. He saw planets under dark skies, storms of light tearing through space, systems collapsing into chaos, species fleeing from something unseen but powerful. "The fracture," the voice said. "A chain reaction in the fabric of space, it would have spread. It would have erased entire regions of the galaxy." Elias felt his chest tighten. The human ships moved again, this time toward the growing storm of light. They did not turn away. "They knew what would happen," the voice continued. "They knew they would not return." The storm swallowed the fleet. The stars went dark. Elias stood in silence, his hands clenched at his sides. "You saved them," he said quietly. "We delayed the end," the voice replied. "Long enough for others to survive, long enough for the conquered to be born." The room changed again. He saw the immortal queen for the first time. She stood younger here, though still tall and radiant, her form glowing with soft gold light. She faced a small group of humans, their faces tired but steady. "You do not have to do this," she said. One of the humans smiled. "We already decided," he replied. "Just promise us something." "What?" the queen asked. "Remember," the human said, "even if no one else does." The vision faded, the light dimmed. Elias found himself alone again in the quiet chamber. The voice spoke one last time. The promise was kept, but the memory was buried. A final line of text appeared in the air before him. "You promised them we would never be forgotten." Elias sank to one knee. The galaxy had called him a traitor for sharing information, for asking questions that made leaders uncomfortable, for refusing to accept simple answers to complicated histories. Now he understood why. This truth did not just change humanity's past, it changed everyone's present. The beacon transferred the full record into his ship system, files older than the Concord itself. Logs from alien archives, Queen Aurelian's own sealed records marked with her personal code. This was not just a story, it was proof. Elias returned to the cockpit, his hands shaking slightly as he set a course. Not back to the fringe, not back to hiding. He opened a secure channel that only one being in the galaxy still monitored, the Immortal Queen. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the screen lit up. Queen Aurelian's face appeared, calm and unreadable, her golden eyes focused on him as if she had been waiting. "You should not be here, Elias Vorn," she said. "Neither should this," he replied and sent the message. The queen watched in silence as the ancient record played. The storm, the ships, the promise. When it ended, she closed her eyes. For the first time in thousands of years, her voice was not steady. "I kept my word," she said softly. "Yes," Elias replied, "but the galaxy didn't." The connection remained open. Neither of them spoke. Outside the ship, the dead star continued its silent watch. The truth had been found, and it was finally on its way home. The immortal queen did not move after the screen went dark. Her throne room was a wide circle of light and glass floating above the heart of the conquered. Below her, the galaxy turned in slow, silent motion, star systems glowing like scattered embers in a deep ocean of night. The room was designed to remind every visitor how small they were compared to what she ruled. But now, she felt small instead. Queen Aurelian stood from her throne for the first time in centuries. The floor beneath her feet glowed brighter, sensing the shift in her presence. Her long robes of golden light flowed around her as she walked toward the edge of the chamber, looking down at the living map of the galaxy. She remembered when it was darker. She remembered when whole regions had been empty, silent, and broken. And she remembered the humans. Aurelian closed her eyes, and the memory returned without asking permission. She stood once more in the early days of her reign, in a chamber far smaller than this one. The walls had been rough stone, not light and crystal. The conquered had not yet been a union of thousands of species. It had been a fragile idea held together by fear of a future that might not exist. The humans had arrived in ships that looked too simple to belong among the great powers of the galaxy. Their hulls were thin. Their engines were loud. Their technology was clever but not overwhelming. And yet they had not come to ask for protection. They had come to offer help. Aurelian opened her eyes. The present returned. The truth Elias had sent her burned quietly in her mind, not as pain, but as weight. A promise kept by one person was still a promise broken by many. She turned toward the far wall of the chamber and spoke a single word. "Council!" The air shimmered. One by one, figures appeared around the circular room. Tall and small, bright and shadowed, some walked on legs, some floated, some glowed like living stars, the leaders of the conquered. They looked at her with calm respect, unaware of what she now carried. Aurelian did not sit. "We have a matter to address," she said. A tall figure with skin like polished stone tilted its head. "Is this about the human envoy?" "Yes," Aurelian replied, "but not in the way you think." A soft ripple of sound passed through the chamber as the council members exchanged quiet signals and glances. "He violated protocol," said another, a being made of shifting blue light. "He shared restricted Starlane data with independent systems. He created unrest." "He asked questions," Aurelian said, That is not the same thing. The result was the same, the blue figure replied. Instability. Aurelian raised her hand and the room fell silent. You erased a truth, she said. The council members stilled. Aurelian extended her hand and the air filled with light. The same images Elias had seen now played in the center of the chamber. The old human ships, the storm of broken space. The promise made in a quiet room long ago. Some of the council looked away. Some leaned forward. Some froze. This record has existed since before this council was formed, Aurelian said. It has existed longer than many of your species have had written language. The stone-skinned leader spoke slowly. Why was this not in the archives? Because it was sealed, Aurelian said. By my order, the chamber stirred. You hid this, the blue figure asked. I protected it, Aurelian replied. At first. She lowered her hand and the light faded. In those early days, the conquered was weak, the galaxy was afraid. If it had been known that one small species had saved us all, power would have shifted. Some would have followed them, others would have tried to control them. So you erased them, another voice said, quiet but sharp. I buried their sacrifice, Aurelian said. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I would restore the truth when the galaxy was ready. Her golden eyes moved slowly across the room. It has been 10,000 years. No one spoke. Far away in a quiet section of the conquered, Elias Vorn waited. He stood in a holding chamber that looked more like a garden than a prison. Soft light filtered through floating leaves. Water moved gently through channels in the floor, whispering as it passed. The conquered did not use bars or chains. It used space and silence. Two watchers stood at the edges of the room. They did not hold weapons. They did not speak. They simply observed. Elias sat on a smooth stone bench, his hands resting on his knees. He did not feel afraid. He felt ready. His ship had been guided here by automated signals the moment he entered conquered space. There had been no chase, no warning, just a path of light leading him forward like the galaxy itself had opened a door. He thought about the humans in the record, about their calm faces, about the way they had accepted a future they would never see. I hope I'm doing this right, he murmured. One of the watchers tilted its head as if it had heard. Back in the council chamber, the silence broke. What do you intend to do now? The stone-skinned leader asked. Aurelian turned away from the galaxy map and faced them. I intend to tell the truth, she said. The blue figure's light flickered. That will change everything. Yes, Aurelian replied. That is the point. She raised her hand again and a new image appeared. This time it showed Elias standing alone in the garden chamber. This human carries the full record, Aurelian said. Not just the story, but the proof, the data, the seals, my own codes. The council stirred again, louder this time. You gave him access, someone asked. He found it, Aurelian said. There is a difference. The stone-skinned leader studied the image. He will become a symbol. Or a target, another voice said. Aurelian's expression softened. He already is both. She turned away from the council. Prepare the Central Assembly, she said. Open the great chamber, signal every member world, every listening post, every drifting station and outpost. The blue figure hesitated. For what purpose? Aurelian looked back at them, and for the first time in centuries, something like quiet fire burned in her eyes. For a single voice, she said, and a long overdue memory. In the garden chamber, the air shifted. Light gathered near the center of the room, forming a soft, glowing path. The watchers stepped aside. A calm voice filled the space. Elias Vorn, it said, you are summoned. He stood without hesitation. The path led him through halls of light and motion. He passed windows that showed oceans of stars. He passed doors that opened into worlds of sound and color. The conquered was not just a place. It was a living idea built from thousands of cultures layered together. At the end of the path, the space opened into something vast beyond words. The Central Assembly. It was larger than any city Elias had seen. A wide, open sphere where platforms floated at different heights, each one holding representatives from a different world. Lights of every color moved through the air like slow comets. Voices blended into a deep, steady hum, and at the very center, on a platform of pure light, stood Queen Aurelian. She looked small in the space, and yet everything seemed to turn toward her. Elias stepped onto the platform across from her. The path of light faded behind him. For a moment they simply looked at each other. You should not have carried this alone, Aurelian said quietly. Neither should you, Elias replied. Aurelian nodded. She turned to the galaxy. Let us begin, she said. The hum of the assembly faded into silence. And across 1,000 worlds, across ships and stations and quiet homes beneath alien skies, screens and stars alike began to glow with a story that had waited 10,000 years to be told. The central assembly did not feel like a room. It felt like the inside of a living star. Light moved in slow waves across the open space, carrying soft colors from one platform to another. Thousands of species stood or floated or rested in ways Elias could not name. Some watched with eyes, some with glowing patterns, some with quiet fields of energy that shifted in rhythm with their thoughts. The galaxy was listening. Elias stood on the platform of light beside Queen Aurelian. His heart beat steady, not fast. He felt the weight of the moment, but not fear. The memory he carried felt heavier than any judgment that could come. Aurelian raised her hand, and the last echoes of movement faded into stillness. "This gathering exists because the galaxy chose unity over isolation," she said. Her voice traveled without speakers, without sound, reaching every listener in the way their minds understood best. But unity built on silence is not unity. It is balance built on missing pieces. A soft ripple moved through the platforms. Elias felt it like a breeze. Aurelian turned slightly toward him. "This human carries a record older than this assembly," she said. "Older than this conquered. It is not a claim, it is not a demand, it is a memory." She stepped back. The light beneath Elias brightened. He swallowed once and began. "My name is Elias Vorn," he said. "I was sent to speak for humanity. I was called a traitor for asking why some stories were missing." His words echoed across the space. "I did not find this truth because I was searching for glory. I found it because I was searching for meaning." The air shifted. Behind him, light formed into moving images. The first human ships appeared again, small, simple, and brave. They drifted through the early galaxy, surrounded by stars that did not yet belong to anyone. Elias spoke slowly, clearly. "These were not warriors. They were explorers. They did not come to take, they came to listen." The images changed. The storm of broken space returned, spreading like a wound across the stars. The assembly stirred. "This was the fracture," Elias said. "It was not a single event. It was a chain that would have erased entire regions of the galaxy." The human ships moved forward in the light. "They knew what would happen," he continued. "They knew they would not be remembered. They chose to go anyway." The storm closed around the fleet. The stars dimmed. Across the platforms, colors faded, lights softened, the galaxy held its breath. Elias lowered his hand. "This is not a story about heroes," he said. "It is a story about choice." The silence that followed felt deep, not empty. A voice rose from one of the higher platforms. It belonged to a being shaped like a ring of soft green light. "Why was this hidden?" it asked. Aurelian stepped forward. "Because I was afraid," she said. The galaxy turned its attention back to her. "I was afraid that truth would become a weapon," she continued. "I was afraid that gratitude would become power. I was afraid that the galaxy would trade one form of control for another." Her golden eyes dimmed slightly. "So I chose silence." Another voice spoke, low and steady, from a platform of stone and shadow. "And in doing so, you let a species fade." Aurelian nodded. "Yes." Elias felt the moment shift. The assembly was no longer watching a story. It was standing inside a question. A soft sound passed through the platforms, like 1,000 quiet conversations happening at once. Aurelian turned back to Elias. "Continue," she said. Elias took a breath. "There is more," he said. "The record does not end with the sacrifice." The light changed. New images appeared, early conquered worlds rising from chaos, species meeting for the first time. Agreements forming, systems stabilizing. "And here," Elias said, "is what came after." The light focused on a single moment. Aurelian, younger, standing before a group of humans in a simple stone chamber. "You do not have to do this," her image said. "We already decided," the human replied. "Just promise us something." The assembly watched as the moment repeated. "Remember," the human said, "even if no one else does." The image faded. Elias turned slowly, looking across the vast space. "The promise was kept," he said. But the memory was buried. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a small platform near the edge of the assembly glowed brighter. A voice emerged, young and curious. "What does humanity want now?" it asked. Elias did not answer right away. He looked at Aurelian. She met his gaze and nodded once. He turned back to the galaxy. "We do not want power," he said. "We do not want titles. We do not want control." He paused. "We want honesty." The word moved through the assembly like a slow wave. We want the truth to exist in the open, Elias continued. Not as a debt, not as a favor, but as a shared memory. A platform of shimmering blue light rose slightly. If this is accepted, the voice from it said, humanity will gain influence, whether you want it or not. Elias nodded. That may happen, he said, but influence built on silence is fragile. Influence built on truth is something the galaxy can choose, not something it is forced to accept. The hum of the assembly grew louder, then softer, like a tide finding its level. Aurelian raised her hand once more. There will be a decision, she said. Not mine, not the Council's. The galaxy stilled. The Conquered was built on the idea that no single voice should rule all others, she continued. This moment will honor that idea. Light spread outward from her platform, connecting every other one in thin, glowing lines. A vote, she said, not on what humanity deserves, but on what the galaxy chooses to remember. The lines pulsed. The assembly came alive with motion and color. Patterns of light, waves of sound, and shifting fields of energy passed between platforms as species spoke in their own ways. Elias stood quietly. He did not try to read the signs. He did not try to guess the outcome. He thought about the humans in the old ships. About the calm in their faces, about the way they had stepped forward without knowing who would ever hear their story. Aurelian watched the galaxy, her hands folded in front of her. For the first time in her long life, she was not guiding the future. She was waiting for it. The light lines slowly dimmed. The movement faded. The assembly grew still again. A single tone rang through the space, not loud but clear. The result had been reached. Aurelian closed her eyes for a brief moment, then opened them. The Conquered has chosen, she said. Every platform leaned in. The memory will be restored, she continued. The record will be placed in every archive, every learning hall, every cultural core across member worlds. A soft wave of light spread outward. Humanity will be recognized as a founding guardian species, Aurelian said. Not for what it demands, but for what it gave. The assembly did not erupt. It did not cheer, it did something quieter. It glowed, colors deepened, lights softened. The galaxy did not celebrate. It acknowledged. Elias felt something in his chest loosen. Aurelian turned to him. This moment belongs to you, she said. Elias shook his head gently. No, he replied, it belongs to them. He gestured toward the fading image of the old human ships. Aurelian smiled, small and real. The assembly began to shift, not away but forward. Representatives leaned toward one another. New connections formed. Questions passed across the light lines that had not yet fully faded. The story was no longer just a story. It was becoming part of the galaxy. Elias stepped back from the edge of the platform. He felt tired, but in a good way, like someone who had carried something heavy to where it finally belonged. Aurelian walked beside him. You have changed the path of more than one species today, she said. I just opened a door, Elias replied. The galaxy walked through it. They stood together, watching the platform slowly return to motion. Far away, on small worlds and drifting stations, beings looked up at glowing screens and quiet stars, hearing a story that made their universe feel larger and smaller at the same time. Aurelian spoke softly. There is one more choice to make. Elias looked at her. For you, she continued. Not for the galaxy. He waited. The Conquered will offer you a place among its highest ranks, she said. A voice that can shape policy, travel without limit, and live far longer than a human lifetime. Elias considered this. He thought about the exile zone, the dead star, the beacon that had waited in silence for someone to listen. I think, he said slowly, my people already gave enough to the center of the galaxy. Aurelian studied him. Then where will you go? She asked. Elias looked out at the sea of stars. Anywhere someone hasn't heard the story yet, he said. The queen nodded. The galaxy did not need another ruler, it needed another listener. And somewhere, far beyond the bright heart of the Conquered, the quiet edges of space waited for a human voice to arrive with a memory that would no longer fade. The stars did not change when Elias Vorn left the central assembly. They still burned in quiet lines across the dark. They still marked paths between worlds that would never fully understand each other. But to Elias, they felt closer now, like something that had finally learned his name. His ship waited for him in a wide bay of soft blue light. The Conquered's great structures moved slowly around it, like gentle giants made of glass and energy. Beings of many shapes passed by, some pausing to look at him, not with curiosity, but with something warmer, recognition. Elias did not bow. He did not stand taller. He simply nodded and walked on. Inside the ship, the familiar hum wrapped around him like an old friend. The chair remembered his shape. The controls lit up the way they always had, simple and clear. He sat down and rested his hands on the console. For the first time in a long while, he did not feel like he was running from something. A soft tone sounded. Aurelian's symbol appeared on the screen. He accepted the connection. The immortal queen's face filled the space, her golden light softer than before. "You are leaving already," she said. "Yes," Elias replied. "There are a lot of places that don't know the story yet." Aurelian nodded slowly. "The Conquered will spread the record through official channels," she said. "Schools, archives, cultural networks, it will be remembered." "Official memory is important," Elias said. "But so is personal memory. Stories travel differently when they're carried by someone who chose to walk instead of being sent." Aurelian smiled at that. "You sound like the humans I met long ago," she said. "Maybe that's the point," Elias replied. The queen studied him for a moment. "There is something I have never said out loud," she said. Elias waited. "When your people made their choice," Aurelian continued, "I believed I was strong for letting them go. I believed I was wise for protecting the galaxy from the power their story might bring." Her light dimmed slightly. "I see now that I was afraid." Elias shook his head gently. "You kept the galaxy together," he said. "That matters too." Aurelian looked past him as if seeing the stars beyond the ship. "Perhaps," she said, "but today I learned something from a human who refused to rule." The connection faded, leaving the cockpit quiet again. Elias set a course not toward a great world or a shining capital, but toward a small cluster of systems on the edge of conquered space. Places that still felt like the fringe. The ship moved. As it traveled, Elias thought about what it meant to be remembered. Not as a name carved into stone, not as a symbol placed in a hall, but as a story told between people who sat together and shared a moment of wonder. The first world he stopped at was small and green, wrapped in soft clouds and gentle light from a pale star. The people there lived in wide open cities that blended into forests and rivers instead of rising above them. They did not have a grand hall for visitors. They had a circle of smooth stones near a lake. Elias stood there as the sun dipped low and the air filled with quiet colors. He told them the story. He did not use grand words. He did not raise his voice. He spoke about simple ships and brave choices and a promise made in a quiet room. The listeners did not cheer. They did not ask for proof. They simply sat and listened. On another world made of endless sand and tall crystal towers, Elias shared the same story with traders who gathered in the shade of glowing arches. On a drifting station near a red star, he told it to engineers who paused their work and leaned against warm metal walls. Everywhere he went, the story changed a little, not in truth, in feeling. Some heard it as hope, some heard it as kindness. Some heard it as a reminder that even small voices could shape large futures. Far away, in the heart of the Conquered, Queen Aurelian watched the changes unfold. Human star maps were being placed beside ancient alien charts in learning halls. The names of the lost fleet were being spoken in languages that had not existed when those humans were alive. Not as rulers, not as legends, but as part of the shared beginning of something bigger than any one species. Aurelian walked through one of the great archives, her light reflecting off walls filled with moving symbols and recorded memories. She stopped before a simple display. It showed the image of a human ship, small and quiet, moving toward a storm of light. Below it were words in hundreds of languages. "We chose to go so others could stay." The queen placed her hand near the display, not touching but close. "Thank you," she whispered. Back among the stars, Elias found himself returning to the place where it had all begun. The dead star still drifted in silence. The beacon still glowed, patient and calm. He docked and stepped inside once more. The chamber greeted him with soft light. "You came back," the voice said. "Yes," Elias replied. "I wanted to say something." The light shifted, forming the same stars, the same ships, the same moment of choice. "You kept your promise," Elias said. "Now the galaxy is helping you keep it too." The voice was quiet for a moment. "Memory grows when it is shared," it said. Elias smiled. "Exactly." He returned to his ship and set a new course, not for any one place, for all the spaces in between. Time passed, not in years or months, but in moments. Moments of quiet talks under strange skies, moments of shared meals with beings who had never met a human before. Moments of children pointing at the stars and asking what had happened there long ago. Elias grew older. His hair turned lighter. His steps slowed. But the story did not. On worlds he would never visit, people spoke of the founding guardians, not as a single species, but as an idea. The idea that someone, somewhere, would choose to step forward even if no one remembered their name. One day, on a small moon with a sky full of slow-moving rings, Elias sat on a low hill and watched the stars rise. A young being sat beside him, its form made of soft light and gentle sound. "Is it true," it asked, "that your people saved the galaxy?" Elias thought for a moment. "My people helped," he said, "but so did yours, so did many others in many different ways." The being tilted its head. "Then why do they talk about humans so much?" Elias smiled. "Because sometimes," he said, "a story needs a starting point." The being looked up at the stars again. Elias followed its gaze. Somewhere out there, new explorers were leaving their home worlds for the first time. Somewhere out there, new choices were being made in quiet rooms. The galaxy was still growing, still learning, still remembering. Far away, Queen Aurelian stood on her platform of light and watched a map that no longer showed just borders and trade routes. It showed stories, lines of connection that marked where someone had listened instead of ruled, where someone had shared instead of claimed, where someone had remembered instead of forgotten. She spoke softly, not to the council, not to the galaxy, but to the memory of those who had come before. "You were not lost," she said. "You were waiting." And across the stars, in small homes and great halls, on drifting stations and living worlds, the story of the quiet human ships continued to be told, not as a tale of power, not as a tale of victory, but as a reminder that the future is not shaped only by those who stand at the center. Sometimes it is shaped by those who choose to walk the long way through the dark, carrying a light that does not demand to be seen. Elias Vorn stood one last time at the window of his ship, watching a sunrise on a world that was not his own. He did not know how many more stars he would see, but he knew this. The memory was no longer his to carry alone. The galaxy had taken it in, and it would not let it fade again.